Welcome back to the channel, guys. The time has finally come. We're going to be upgrading my Xbox 360 with an SSD. Okay then guys, so welcome back. So after nearly 2 decades of waiting, we've now reached the point where we can actually upgrade our retail Xbox 360 with an SSD. So prior to this capability, the best that we could actually do was to use an old Western Digital hard drive manufactured before 2020, and that allowed us to upgrade our hard drives to 500 gigabytes as opposed to the 60 gigabyte, 120 gigabyte, etc. hard drives that we would already have in our systems. So the reason this is now possible is because of the latest FATXplorer update, which includes the Xbox 360 SSD Maker. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through the process, and I'm going to show you the SSD that I've bought especially for this and get this upgraded. So you can do this on all of the Xbox 360 models. However, for the Slim and E models, as I mentioned in the hard drive upgrade video, I recommend that you just go and buy yourself an enclosure for the drive rather than disassembling your current drive, as they don't go back together properly. For the sake of around £5 to £6, it's easier to just go ahead and buy one of those enclosures and install it that way. But if you've got a phat model, as they call it, like mine here, then it's easy enough just to open up the existing enclosure and swap the hard drive out for the SSD. So first things first, I'll just show you the SSD that I'm using for this. So this is the SSD we're going to be using, the Lexar NQ100, the 512 gigabyte version. So I'll just open this up. Just a standard SATA 3 SSD. So I went with this because I did notice on one of the posts that the developer originally released about this feature. In that post, he did mention that this is one of the reliably compatible drives. So that's why I went ahead and got one so that we can go ahead and attempt this today. So let's bring over the computer and let's get to formatting this and getting it ready for the Xbox. Okay then guys, so now we're on the computer. And just before we go ahead and get the drive formatted here, I just wanted to show you guys the post from the developer, just with a bit of information about the SSD Maker itself. So as you can see here, it says, while previously you were limited to Western Digital HDDs manufactured before 2020, you can now purchase many different SSDs from various brands in new condition and expect them to work. However, that does not mean every SSD is compatible. Only SSDs with specific controllers are going to work. Controllers from Silicon Motion, Phison, Maxio and Realtek are currently supported. So ultimately, your SSD should work, but there is a chance that it doesn't work and you may have to get a different one for this. The other thing to mention, guys, here is that unfortunately, unlike the HDD upgrade method that we did before, whereby you could use a trial version of the program to get it formatted, the SSD Maker is a paid feature. And so there's two options. You can go ahead and buy the full FATXplorer license there for $25, which gives you access to all of the features of FATXplorer. Or if you just like me and you just want to go ahead and get your SSD formatted, then you can just go and pay the $3 to just get access to the SSD Maker. It gives you unlimited access, so you can do this as many times as you want. So I think it's worth it personally, but if you don't want to pay, then unfortunately you won't actually be able to use the SSD Maker and you won't be able to upgrade your Xbox 360 with an SSD. So now we've got that out of the way, let's get on with actually getting this drive formatted and prepared for our Xbox 360. So first thing we want to do is we want to download these three things here, which are the latest FATXplorer beta, the Xbox 360 system update. Now, for me, it is the latest one because my console is on the latest update. However, for some of you out there that are on an older update and you don't want to be on the latest update, then you'll need to download the system update for your particular build. You also need the backwards compatibility files. I'll put links to all three of these in the description so you don't have to go and get them yourselves. So once you've downloaded all three of those things, you just want to start by opening the FATXplorer zip file and dragging out the FATXplorer file there just to your desktop. Then once you've done that, we just want to close the Explorer window and open the FATXplorer folder here. And then once you've opened the FATXplorer folder, you just want to scroll down and find the FATXplorer executable, which is that one there. So if we double click that, you then just want to press yes on the UAC prompt that appears. And a few seconds later, you should find the FATXplorer program opening like so. Okay, now what you want to do is you just want to plug in your SSD. You can do this via SATA or you can do it via a USB adapter, whichever suits you best. Now, just out of curiosity, we're just going to go over to devices here. And we're just going to refresh it just to make sure there definitely isn't any Xbox 360 hard drives detected at this current stage. And as you can see, there are no devices found. So what you want to do is you want to go over to Xbox 360 SSD Maker. You want to select that. Just give it a couple of seconds to search for devices. And once it's done that, you should be able to select a device to modify up here. Once you do that, you should then get a list of devices to select. And for us, as we said before, it is a Lexar NQ100. I have connected it direct via SATA. So I imagine if you connect it via a USB adapter, you may see it listed as something like a J micron device or something like that. But it shouldn't make a difference. You just want to select that. So once you've done that, it should then pop up with the information of the drive, which in this case, it is a 476.94 gigabyte drive. It's a Lexar NQ100 512 gigabyte, and the controller is a Maxio MA1102. Now, this part here is quite interesting to note. So the reason that this actually works is because it spoofs the Xbox into thinking that it is actually a proper Microsoft hard drive. And to do that, it has to use a security sector from an official Microsoft hard drive. And so the one that we're using here is actually for the 500 gigabyte drive, but the usable space on those is actually only 465.76. And so because of that, as you can see here, it says 11.18 gigabyte is actually unusable. And that's because the Lexar is actually 476 gigabytes as opposed to the 465 gigabytes that the Microsoft drive would have been. It does also say it can't be used interchangeably with JTAG and RGH, but I imagine the majority of people who are watching this video are going to be doing this for a standard retail console, so it's not a problem at all. So what we want to do now is we want to go ahead and select backup and flash. And as you can see, it's at this point where they want you to enter the license key. So if you already got a license key, you just want to select enter license key and put it in there. If you need a license key, then you just want to click buy, and it will tell you that it's going to open the internet browser to get you to buy it. So if you just want the SSD Maker, which is the $3 license, then you just want to go ahead and select buy now from this page, and it will pop up and give you some options here to buy the license, and it will email you the license as well as showing you on the screen. So if you do close your browser or something like that, you can actually retrieve the license key from your email. If you want to buy the full license, you just need to go over to here where it says purchase, and then when you select that one, you will get the full $30 license there, which gives you access to the full program. I've just gone with the SSD Maker license for now, so I'm going to paste that into this box and we will continue from there. Okay, so once you've inputted your license and gone next, it will then pop up and prompt you to save an undo.bin file. Now, the reason this is important is if you want to potentially use your drive in the future for something else other than the Xbox 360, then it would be best practice to put the original firmware back on it. So you just want to go ahead and press OK. Now, I've already saved this before, but I am going to save it again just to be double sure, and I'm going to save it here in an Xbox 360 folder. Press yes to replace it because I've already got one there. Now, if you get this message, don't worry. What it's saying here is flash successful, but failures occurred. There are other error messages you might get at this stage as well. One of them is for the Silicon Motion controllers, and that is it asks you to select a loader for the SSD. Now, I tried this with my Crucial MX500 drive and I could not get it to work no matter what loader I selected. So I'm going to circle back to that message on the developer's website that basically says that not every SSD is compatible here. It is going to be slightly hit and miss with this. It's a brand new feature. You are potentially going to struggle with certain SSDs with certain controllers, but for this error message here, I'm going to show you what you need to do to proceed. So you just go ahead and press OK. Now the first thing we want to do is we want to unplug the drive. So I'm going to do that now, and then you want to just re-plug it back in. Now once you've done that, if you go over to devices, hopefully you should see it there. So if I go ahead and refresh, you want to see it there. But in certain situations like mine here, you won't see it there. Again, it's not a problem, because if we go back over to the SSD Maker and we go down to select a device to modify, as you can see now, it is actually showing up as a Hitachi drive. And if we select it, it says the device's firmware already matches the security sector. And as you can see, the model number, serial number, etc. matches, so that's fine. So what we want to do is we want to come out of the SSD Maker and go over to formatting tools. So once we go over to formatting tools, we just want to select Xbox 360 HDD, and it will search for devices and give you a list. And as we now know, it is detected as a Hitachi drive, so it's that one there. So if I just select that and go next, in the flashing step, it has actually already given us the correct security sector and it's valid and matches, so we don't need to change anything there. We just want to go ahead again and press next. Now on this screen, it's best to just leave everything as it is. So you want the backwards compatibility partition and the content partition saying yes. And you don't need to worry about the other two, they can just be left as no. So we just want to go ahead and press next. Now it wants us to set a name, so I'm just going to call it 500GB SSD, and then we're going to go next. Now at this point it's asking us to put a backwards compatibility partition zip file in there. I'm not going to bother, we're just going to do that manually on the next step. So if I just go ahead and press next on that, we can ignore all that information there on the left and just go ahead and press format. And as you can see there, it says format completed successfully. So if I press OK on that, we now want to go over to devices, where previously it was saying there was no devices detected. And as you can see, the Hitachi Xbox 360 HDD is now there detected. So we can just double check by pressing refresh, and after a refresh, it's still there. So we've now successfully flashed the Xbox 360 SSD. And if we want, we can now actually put this directly back into the Xbox 360 and it should be functioning. Okay, so at this point, the drive will actually work in the console. However, if you want to enable the backwards compatibility feature and you also want to transfer games, profiles, saves, etc. from your original drive to the SSD, then you'll have to follow the next steps I'm going to show you now. So we'll start with putting the backwards compatibility files on there. So first thing we want to do is we want to open FATXplorer again, and you want to plug in the SSD again to your computer if you haven't already. Then you want to go over to where it says devices and click that, and you should see your SSD listed there. It will say Xbox 360 HDD, but it is your SSD that you've now formatted. So we just want to go ahead and click on that and select load device. Should be fairly fast since it's now an SSD, and once it's finished you should get two options here. So what we want to do first is we want to select the backwards compatibility partition. So we want to click on that and select the option here where it says mount backwards compatibility partition, and in my case mount it on the drive letter X. So if we just select that, we'll then get a license prompt. So if you haven't activated the trial already, then you just want to activate the trial, or in my case you just want to go ahead and press continue trial. When you do that, you should get an Explorer window, and because this is a brand new drive, there's going to be nothing in this folder at all. So we just want to go now and minimize these windows, and you just want to open the backwards compatibility zip file that you downloaded earlier. We just want the compatibility folder for now. So we just want to copy this compatibility folder here onto the root of the backwards compatibility partition. So if I just open the window that we mounted a few seconds ago, and we just move that to the bottom there, we're just going to drag the compatibility over to the 500GB SSD X drive there. So that's all we needed to do for that part. So if we just get rid of that window and the next one, we now want to go back to FATXplorer and devices. Interestingly, now it's called a 500GB SSD as opposed to the Hitachi drive that it was labeled as before. But we just want to click that and select unmount. Once the tick at the top right has disappeared there, we just want to click it again and select load device. This time we're going to mount the content partition. So if we select the content partition and select mount at the bottom again, continue trial, and now as you can see we have the content partition there. So once we've opened this partition, we can just go ahead and minimize these two windows again, and we just want to open the backwards compatibility zip file once more, and this time we're looking at the April 2018 title update. So if we just click on the readme at the bottom here, as you can see, it gives some instructions here on where to actually place the title update. We need to create this path here on the content partition. So let's go ahead and do that. So the first folder there is content. So if I just go back to the drive, we just want to make a new folder and call that content. Then a bunch of zeros, and I'm not going to count those, I'm just going to copy the zeros there, Control-C, and then we're going to go into the content folder that we've just made, make a new folder, and paste the zeros I've just copied and press enter. Now we're going to go back here, and again I'm just going to copy the title ID there, so Control-C, go inside the folder with all the zeros, make a new folder, paste the title ID, press enter, and the last folder we need to create is this one here, so I'll just copy the name again, Control-C, go inside the folder we've just made there, new folder, paste the title and press enter. So now we've made the folder path that we need to put the title update in. So I'm just going to go into that folder so that we're inside it now, and we're going to go back to the backwards compatibility zip file that we've got here. So we just want to go into where it says April 2018 title update and double click that. And as you can see, we've got the title update there. So all we want to do now is copy the title update into the final folder that we've just made on the drive. So all I'm going to do is click on it and drag it into that folder. And so now we've fully enabled backwards compatibility on our new SSD. Okay, so if you're doing this with the fat Xbox 360, as I call it, which is the original style Xbox with a big hard drive like this on top, then we're going to go ahead and take this one apart. We did do this in the previous video where we did the hard drive upgrade, and the steps are the same. So first things first, we just need to remove the Microsoft sticker there. So I'm just going to peel it back up. And once you've removed that sticker, you've got access to all of the screws here. So you just want to get a number 5 hex screwdriver and just go ahead and remove all those. So let's do that first. So with those screws removed, you should find that it's actually loose at one end like that. So you just want to sort of tilt the back up like so. And what you actually want to do is you want to push the top that way. So push it as far as you can and then get it just over the edge and push it that way like so, and you'll find it pops straight off. So now you need a number 9 hex screwdriver to remove all 4 of these screws here. So let's go ahead and do that. And with all 4 of those screws removed, we just want to lift this plate up and just pull it away, and it should come away like so. So to remove the drive, we just want to separate the SATA lead here from the drive. So if we just keep that held with one hand and slide it back. Now to actually get the drive out, as you'll notice, it gets stuck here. So all you want to do is carefully just lean this back like so, and then you should be able to slide the drive out without issue there. And for those of you that watched my previous video, this is the 500GB drive that I used to upgrade from the original 60GB drive that was in this Xbox 360. Okay, so to copy everything from your previous drive to your new drive, you just want to plug in your existing Xbox 360 hard drive. Now, I recommend plugging in one via SATA and one via USB. The reason for that is because the transfer speed will be much faster than if you connect both via SATA or both via USB, unless your computer only has USB 2, in which case I would just plug both of them in via SATA. So my SSD is plugged in via SATA at the moment. I'm going to plug in the existing Xbox 360 hard drive via a USB 3 port, so I'm just going to do that now. And once you've done that, you want to go over to Devices here in FATXplorer, and you just want to select Refresh. So if I press that, as you can see, we now have 2 drives detected in the computer. So what we want to do is we want to select the new drive that's been populated here, which should be the original Xbox 360 hard drive, and we just want to select that, and again press Load Device. So when you do this, you will get a lot more partitions appear here because it is an original 360 drive. So what we want to do is we just want to go right the way to the bottom here where it says Content Partition. So we just want to select that, and we want to mount partition on E. So if we just select that, and again go with Continue Trial, as you can see, we now have my original hard drive mounted here. And if you remember my previous video where I upgraded it, this is actually a 500GB hard drive. So the 2 folders that we are bothered about here are Content and Cache. Cache should be any title updates and that kind of thing, and Content is pretty much everything else. Don't need to worry about any other folders, it's just those 2 folders. If you don't have a cache folder, don't worry about it, but you will have a content folder, and that is arguably the most important one to transfer. So at this point you should have ticks on both of these, and it means they're both accessible via the Windows Explorer. I've kept my 2 windows open, and I've actually put them side by side here. So as you can see, the window on the left here is the 500GB SSD, and the window on the right here is the 500GB hard drive. So we're just going to highlight the cache and content folder from the original hard drive, and we're going to drag them over to the SSD that I've got here on the left, and we're just going to wait for that to complete. So depending on how big your library of games is, depends on how long this is going to take. I do have quite a big library, so this could take quite a while. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip now to when it is finished, and we can proceed with the next steps. Okay, and so you might actually get some duplicate files here, and it might ask you to either skip the file or replace the file in destination. You can do either or, but I'm going to go ahead and replace the file in destination. And as you can see, that's all copied and finished. So what we can do now is we can close these windows, and then we just want to go into FATXplorer and go over to Devices again, and click on both of these and unmount them. And as you unmount them, as you can see, the tick disappears. So I'll just do that again on the one on here, and that's perfectly fine. So we just want to close FATXplorer and eject both of the disks from our computer. So we'll go with the Hitachi first, and then we'll do the USB drive there. And that's it for transferring all of our stuff across. So you just want to take your SSD, and you want to note the setup of the pins here. As you can see, we've got the short edge on the left and the long edge on the right. So we're going to make sure we put it in the right way with the screw holes facing up. So we just want to slide this in. You might find it's a lot thinner than the original drive that you've removed. And so we just want to plug it into the SATA connection we've got here. So you just want to line it up like so and push. Now you just want to make sure that it's resting on top of this bit here. So if we just lift it up and just push it over and pull it across like so, you'll find when it rests on that, as you can see, all of the screw holes are now lined up. So next thing we want to do is bring over our steel plate again and drop that back on. And now we just want to reinstall these 4 screws that we removed before. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, and our button's just dropped out there, so I'm just going to drop that in there. And the next step is to reinstall the top lid. So if we pick the drive up, what we're trying to do is hook the 2 hooks into those 2 locating points there. So if I just send it over the front, as you can see, we've now hooked in, and we should be able just to push this back now in place like so. And as you can see at the front, it's now all in place properly. It's perfect. So now we just want to reinstall the original screws that we removed, so let's do that. And the last optional step here is if you want to reinstall the sticker, you can. I just like to because it stays quite sticky, and that's the drive reassembled. Okay, and so for those of you that have got a Slim or E model 360, as I mentioned earlier in the video, I highly recommend that you go ahead and buy one of these enclosures rather than taking the original drive apart. So when you buy these, they just come like this. It's just a hollow shell, and you should just be able to take the lid off like so, and it just pops open like that, and you just get 2 sides. Now the way to know which way to put it in, obviously we have a hole at that end and not at that end, and so if you just bring over your drive. Now this is the drive that I did actually previously try to upgrade the 360 with and failed, as we've just already built the working drive into the phat hard drive enclosure. I'm just going to be using this as an example. So as you can see here, there are 4 prongs in each corner here, and those feet are actually locating feet for the SSD screw holes that we've got here. So all you want to do is you want to drop it in so that the locating feet go into the holes, and you should see the connector through the hole here. Then all we do, drop the lid back on and just push it until it clicks. So with the lid on, you should find that the connectors are visible at that end, and if you've done that, you're all sorted. Okay then guys, so if you connect your Xbox 360 to the internet, then you can skip this next step, as it will prompt for an update when you turn the console on, and that will sort out the avatars for you. However, if you don't connect your Xbox 360 to the internet, or you're on an older update or something like that, then you will need to do this next step that I'm going to show you now to get the avatars working again. So first of all, you need to get yourself a spare USB stick. It only needs to be a few hundred megabytes, so anything like a 4 gig or an 8 gigabyte stick will be absolutely fine for this. So once you've got your USB, you just want to plug it into your computer and go over to your FATXplorer and head over to this PC. You should see it populated here, and what you want to do is you want to check that it is FAT32. So you just want to right click on it and press Properties. And as you can see here, mine is FAT32. If it's a different file system like exFAT or NTFS, then you just want to go ahead and right click on it and press Format, and you'll be able to go down here where it says File System and select FAT32, press Start, and it should format it for you in the correct file system. So once you've formatted it correctly, you just want to go over to the system update that you downloaded earlier. Again, if you don't want to update your console to the latest update and it is on an older one, you will need the zip file from the update that your console is on. Otherwise, it will update to the latest dashboard update. So I'm going to use the latest version because that's what my console is on. And so what we're going to do, we're going to open up the system update zip file. And I've got that in a window here on the right, and I'm just going to go into the USB stick that we've just formatted and plugged in, and I'm just going to copy over the $system update folder that's within the zip file. Just copy that over to our USB stick. And we just want to wait a few minutes for that to complete. Okay, and once that's finished, we can just close out of all these windows, eject our USB stick, and now it's ready to be used on our console. Okay guys, so it's the moment you've all been waiting for. Let's see if the Xbox detects the SSD. So I'm just going to power it on. And the rings are spinning, which means we've got a successful boot. As you can see there, it says I am now signed in, which means it is detecting the drive as the profile is stored on the drive. So if we go across now to social, as you can see there, my profile's signed in. However, there is no avatar. So if you connect your Xbox 360 to the internet, that's all you have to do. And when you actually turn your Xbox on, or when you try to go and sign in, you'll notice that you get a message to update. And if you're happy with being on the latest update, then you can just go ahead and press yes on that, and it will download the avatar update and your console will reboot and you should be good to go. But if you don't connect your Xbox to the internet, or you're on an earlier update, then you need to bring over the USB that you created in the previous step, and you just want to go ahead and plug it in. So I'm going to do that now with mine. And shortly after that, you should get a message on the screen. And all you want to do is go ahead and press yes to the message that appears. And when you do that, it should go ahead and extract the files necessary for the avatars to the new SSD that we've just installed, and the console will then reboot. As you can see now, it's rebooting. And we signed in again. But if we go over to the social tab now, as you can see, we've got my avatar fully working again. So if we just go over to settings and we select our new SSD, we're just going to check that the backwards compatibility update has actually been installed. And to do that, we just need to go down to System Items. And as you can see there at the bottom, we've got Xbox Back Compat Title Update. Okay guys, so I just thought I'd take the opportunity just to do a small comparison with a couple of games here, just so that we can see what the differences are between loading from a hard drive and loading from an SSD. So I've just picked a couple of games that I've got installed on demand on my Xbox 360. So we'll just go ahead and start with Dead Rising 2 off the record. And what I'm doing is I'm loading the game up to the point where I load my save, which I believe is the most accurate way to actually test the difference in performance between the two drives. So let's go ahead and see how long it takes to load from the hard drive. And what I'm trying to do here is press the A button at the same time as I start the timer. So as you can see there, we're looking at just under 8 seconds, 7.79 seconds for the hard drive test. And now moving on to the SSD test. So again, we've done the exact same timing. And as you can see there, it's about a second different. So not a huge difference in performance there. It's pretty similar. So now we're going to do the test with Just Cause 2. So I'm going to be loading my autosave. So if we just watch the hard drive test now. And I do believe I was slightly late on the pausing there, but as you can see, we have 10.63 seconds there to load the autosave from the hard drive. And now loading the exact same thing, but from the new SSD. So let's see how that goes. So just under 9 seconds there, and I believe I was slightly late pausing on the hard drive test, so I would say there's around about a second's difference there, not much really. And for the last test, we're going to do Red Dead Redemption. Now this one did show quite a noticeable difference in performance, as you'll see now. So if we just go ahead and watch the hard drive test first. So just under 25 seconds there from the hard drive. Now moving on to the SSD test. And there we are, loaded in, and as you can see, it's taken less than 15 seconds, which is just over 10 seconds faster than from the hard drive. Okay guys, so there we go. We have successfully upgraded my Xbox 360 with an internal SSD. So just to answer a couple of questions that some of you might have, do I think it's worth it? So I don't recommend you go out and buy an SSD especially for this, especially if you've already got a 500GB hard drive that's fully working. And once the games are actually installed to a hard drive, we don't actually wait that long for them to load anyway. If the Xbox 360 used SATA 3, then we would see a much bigger difference. But in the absence of that, as we've already seen during the tests, there isn't a huge difference in loading time, and it does seem to vary from game to game. So there isn't really a guarantee that the games that you play will actually benefit from having an SSD upgrade. The other question that I can see being asked is, does this allow us to surpass the 500GB size limit? And the answer to that is no. We're still stuck with the original security sectors from the original drives, which means we're never actually going to be able to surpass the internal 500GB drive limit for retail consoles. But it's great that even though we are nearly 2 decades from when this console released, we are now able to upgrade these with an SSD. It just means that when the hard drives for the previous method start to become hard to get, we are still going to be able to recover these consoles and put new drives in them when they fail. So I hope you guys have enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you all in the next one.